Hey Film Buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today we're going to do another 43 Facts video. Last video we talked about the movie that saved the slasher genre, Scream. So today we're going to talk about the movie that arguably kicked off the slasher genre with John Carpenter's classic Halloween that came out in 1978. So without further ado, let's get into talking about the facts. Most people believe, and it's kind of become an urban legend, that Halloween was originally supposed to be called the Babysitter Murders.
And it occurred to me that if we did a movie about babysitters, it would work because everybody had either been a babysitter or been a baby.
And watching a few interviews with Irwin Yablans, who was the man credited for kind of coming up with the idea for the movie Halloween, it seems like that's not true. He's debunked that over the last couple years, saying that the movie was always supposed to be set on and called Halloween.
The word Halloween, in as much as we could research, not only had not been used, but even the word had not been used as part of another title in the history of the movie business.
Depending on what source you look at, it took 2 to 3 weeks to write the script for Halloween, which may be more time than it took to film the entire thing. And to keep the dialogue authentic, John Carpenter focused on the suspense, where Deborah Hill, which was his co-creator and girlfriend at the time, focused on the teenage dialogue of the girls.
Come on, Annie. Bob and I have been planning on it all week.
The movie was shot in 22 days on a budget of $320,000, and it was shot on such a low budget so John Carpenter could use it as a bargaining chip to have complete creative control over the movie.
If you can do that, you can have final cut, you can have it able to title. I mean, you can have anything you want.
John took a payday
The princely sum of $10,000, which, by the way, was a lot of money for John at that time, and 10% of profit, which I'm sure he believed that he would never see a dollar of.
and $70,000, or 20% of the full budget, was spent on a brand new Panavision camera with a Panaglide mount that was brand new at the time and allowed filmmakers to get more steady shots than what they would get with a traditional Steadicam. $20,000 of the budget was spent on crazy Dr. Loomis as actor Donald Pleasance.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
And Peter Cushing's, aka Grand Moff Tarkin, was offered the role, but he turned it down because the pay was too low. And Christopher Lee, aka Count Dracula, aka Count Dooku, aka Saruman, was offered the role of Dr. Loomis, but turned it down.
Years later, we ran into Christopher Lee at a party, and he said, "That is the biggest mistake I ever made of my career."
The only reason Donald Pleasance took the role as Dr. Loomis is because his daughter,
who's a rock and roll guitar player, thought that the music you did in Assault on Precinct 13 was good.
Nick Castle, who played Michael Myers, was only paid $25 a day, which I think goes to explain why he was so angry running around stabbing people. But he was lucky, I guess, because a lot of the cast and crew worked for free. Deborah Hill was one of those said cast and crew members who actually stepped in as Michael Myers at one point, or at least Michael's hands, because due to time restraints, they couldn't get a kid on set to play young Michael's hands during the POV shot, so Deborah Hill stepped in to be said hands. The actress who played Judith Myers was actually a Playboy model named Sandy Johnson, and she said that the worst part about filming the movie was the fake blood that would stain her skin and had to be scrubbed off in between each and every take. And Carpenter's state-of-the-art camera could only hold about 5 minutes of film, so that whole POV scene was actually 3 separate scenes spliced together with hidden cuts. The first cut is when Michael puts on the mask, and the second one is when he leaves Judith's room after killing her and starts to go down the stairs. In finding a final girl, John Carpenter's first choice was Anne Lockhart, but she declined, so he pivoted to Plan B. Carpenter really loves the Alfred Hitchcock movie Psycho, hence lifting Sam Loomis's name directly from that film, and that's why he desired to have Jamie Lee Curtis play the role of Laurie Strode, because she is Janet Leigh's daughter, and Janet Leigh is the actress who played Marion Crane in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho.
When Jamie Lee Curtis came to mind, one thing popped in my mind: Janet Leigh in Psycho. So we hired Jamie Lee for that reason, who incidentally would have been best choice anyway. She turned to be a fine actress.
And is also where Marion Chambers gets her name from in Halloween. Now let's talk about some Michael Myers Fast Masks fun facts. Due to the tight budget, production designer Tommy Lee Wallace had a choice between 2 different masks that he could get cheaply. The first was a Dawn Post Emmett Kelly clown mask, and the second one was a 1975 Captain Kirk mask, which, as we know, is what they went with. but they made some alterations in widening the eyes and taking off the eyebrows, painting the face and hair a different color to differentiate it from Captain Kirk.
The hilarious thing about the mask situation is that the mask of Captain Kirk, anyway, looked nothing like him.
Said Captain Kirk mask was purchased from a costume shop on Hollywood Boulevard for $1.98.
I guess I owe the success of Halloween to William Shatner. Well, sort of.
And speaking of wardrobe, the movie was originally supposed to take place multiple days leading up to Halloween, but due to the budget constraints, once again, that we keep hearing about, they decided to cut it down to one day to eliminate multiple sets and different costume changes that each of the characters would have to go through. Jamie Lee Curtis bought her own attire for the movie from JCPenney's for about $100 so she could pick out what Laurie would wear. And although Haddonfield, Illinois is based on Deborah Hill's hometown of Haddonfield, New Jersey, the movie was not filmed in Illinois or New Jersey. It was filmed in South Pasadena, California. And the original Michael Myers house was supposed to be torn down in the 1980s, but was saved and relocated north about a couple blocks by the city and designated as a landmark. And if you live on the East Coast, don't worry, you don't have to travel the whole way to California to see the Michael Myers house. There is actually a replica in Hillsborough, North Carolina, that is the private residence of Kenny Caperton, who is a big Halloween fan. Not only was the movie filmed in California, but it was also filmed in spring, which made it impossible for them to find regular fallen leaves that you would find in October in Illinois, so the crew went and bought fake paper leaves and painted them so it looked like there were leaves on the ground.
And when we finished that scene, you know what we did? We went and raked the leaves, picked them up, and put them back in the bags for the next time.
Something else that places this movie shooting location in California over Illinois is there are a few palm trees that snuck their way in to the background of some of the street shots that they missed while filming.
Unfortunately, especially in the beginning of the movie, you can see a few palm trees. That's the only thing that screwed it.
And being in the spring, the crew had a really hard time finding pumpkins. They ended up finding 3 of them and eventually finding a 4th that was green that they painted orange for set decoration. In other pumpkin-related news, a lot of fans say on the Halloween poster, if you look at the hand that's carving the pumpkin, it looks like a face with worms coming out of the eyes and mouth. Bob Gleason, who was the artist who drew that poster, has said since that he sees what they're saying, but that was actually done completely unintentionally. And another hidden face, in the opening credits when they're zooming into the pumpkin, the eye and the nose actually makes a little Michael Myers holding a chef's knife. And speaking of carved fruit, all the knife stabs that we hear in the movie was actually achieved by someone shoving a knife into a watermelon. And sound design was really important for Halloween. John Carpenter wrote the score in 4 days, and the is actually inspired by the bongo playing of his younger days. It's a 5/4 time signature that his father taught him on the bongos that Carpenter adapted to the piano. In fact, the entire movie of Halloween does not work without John Carpenter's score.
Well, it didn't work without the music, and interestingly enough, I showed it to an executive from 20th, but I didn't have the music on it. And she said, "This is not frightening. There's nothing scary about this movie."
And with the music added, the movie was finished, but filmmakers got a little bit worried, where at their first screening during a UCLA film class, 1/3 of the audience got up and walked out.
And, I looked over at my wife and said, well, but 33% of the people aren't going to like a horror picture.
Which really worried them that it wasn't going to do well. And that may have something to do with Michael Myers' unsettling personality. John Carpenter crafted him to be a character that no one in the audience can relate to.
It's a schizophrenic stare, is what it is. It's a real evil stare. And it was like the creepiest thing I'd ever seen, just because as a stranger, it was completely insane.
And the speech that Dr. Loomis gives about Michael,
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face,
was based on an experience that John Carpenter had when he went to a mental facility when he was younger.
There was this kid, I must have been 12 or 13, and he literally had this look That I gave the lines to Donald Pleasance to say.
But once it was finally released, audiences loved it, and word of mouth pushed this movie to make about $47 million, which is about $150 million today, making Halloween one of the most successful independent films of all time. And a few final facts to wrap up Halloween. Even though we get our
rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie
from Halloween,
you can never have sex, never drink or do drugs.
Go get me a beer.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
Because you won't be back.
John Carpenter says that he never meant to make a tale encouraging sexual morality.
To me, these kids are just engaged in normal teenage behavior. They get killed because they're not paying attention.
The subtitle Night of the Witches was added to the Italian release of the film because in Italy, Halloween isn't as celebrated as United States, especially not in 1978. In other countries, the Night of format was used to rename Halloween a lot, but most countries just skip the subtitles altogether and just rename the film. In Belgium, it's called the Night of the Creeps, in France, it's called the Night of the Masks, and in Brazil, it's called the Night of Terrors. Michael's full name is
Michael Audrey Myers.
That we learned from the TV cut of the movie, and the reason that we have a TV cut of the film is because NBC has a standard for how long a movie has to be, and the original Halloween that was released in theaters was 2 minutes short, so they had to add 2 scenes, one of which being a courtroom scene with Dr. Loomis, where Michael's full name is revealed. So that's all the facts that I have about Halloween. Let me know any movies you want to see down in the comments covered here, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.